Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, everybody. This is a live session that I wanted to do for those of you that are interested in Arabic studies. And what I'm going to do for this session is I'm going to pretend that you're actually sitting in my classroom. Me as a public speaker is a different thing, and me, playing the role of a teacher in a classroom is a little bit different. And I'm just going to pretend that you're in my classroom, and you're sitting there, and I'm giving you an orientation on how to get started in Arabic. I'm fully aware that you guys are all at very, very different levels in Arabic study. The orientation session is something that essentially applies to everybody. And I'm going to try to organize this material so that it's more specific to each group of you, meaning at different levels where you are in your Arabic. Maybe you know absolutely nothing about it. Maybe you've been studying it for a couple of years, and maybe something in between. So regardless of what level you're at, inshallah ta'ala, I'm hoping that this session and continuous sessions after this you're going to find beneficial. So the first thing, let's get started. And by the way, it'd be good for those of you that are serious about this, even though you don't have to, have a notebook, take some brief notes on some of this stuff that I'm sharing with you, because I think it'll help you in the long run. The first thing I want to get started with is attention span. I'm not going to give you a long lecture. I'm going to try to keep this at most 20 minutes, probably even less, and do multiple sessions so you can keep retaining what I share with you here. Because if I give you an hour-long thing or a 45-minute thing, you're going to zone out in a few minutes anyway. So I'm aware of that as a teacher, so I'm going to try to do that, inshallah ta'ala, for these sessions. So let's get started. The first thing is there are three kinds of Arabic study. Okay, there are three different kinds of Arabic you can say. For like, you just walked into my class and you say, I want to learn Arabic. I'm going to say, actually, which Arabic do you want to learn? Because there's at least three different kinds, and I want you to know what they are. There's classical Arabic, then there is standard Arabic, and then there is spoken Arabic. Okay, we'll just use these easy terms. We don't have to get academic about it. Classical Arabic, spoken Arabic, and standard Arabic. So classical Arabic is Arabic that was spoken many, many centuries, maybe even more than a millennium ago. This is the language of the Quran. This is the language of the ancient poets. This is the language before Islam. It started changing actually pretty soon after Islam, because when cultures come into contact with other cultures, language gets influenced. The Arabs were pretty isolated people, so they had their own kind of language. But when Islam came and made Arabic an international phenomenon, a lot of foreigners came into the language, right? So when foreigners come into a culture and a language, it starts impacting that language, kind of like what happened to English in New York City, right? So the same way Arabic started getting influenced, and there are even some statements of companions of the Prophet ﷺ saying, this is not the Arabic we used to speak. Like, they're noticing changes in the language. So when I say classical Arabic, I'm talking about that ancient Arabic that was spoken at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's almost crystallized. It's a historical study. It's not something that's completely alive. Parts of it are, but not in its entirety. Nobody speaks that anymore. You have to study how they used to speak back in the day. It's kind of like Shakespeare in English. Like, okay, we can understand Shakespeare, but we're not going to speak Shakespeare. Nor are people going to use the expressions that Shakespeare's using. You have to kind of figure out how did people use these verbs and these nouns and these idioms of that time, right? And we, of course, English speakers are more aware of this, and it's easier for us to understand this because, the English of the 80s is not the English of the 90s, and that's not the English of the 2000s, and it's not the English of today. The language has, dramatically transformed. If you went to somebody, 300 years ago and spoke to them in the English language and said, "Man, that's hot," or "That was poppin'," "That was cool," they wouldn't understand what that means. When they say that was cool, we say that it's summer. How is it cool? So they wouldn't understand certain expressions. So that's classical Arabic. That's back in the day. Okay. Now there's standard Arabic, or you can call it formal Arabic. That's the Arabic of the Al Jazeera network. That's the Arabic of the newspaper. That's the Arabic that you might find on television shows, formal shows. That's the Arabic of a modern book written in Arabic. Even an Islamic book written in Arabic today is in modern standard Arabic. It's called, for our purposes, we're going to call it standard Arabic. It has many of the same principles as classical Arabic, but it's not nearly as rich, and it's not nearly as deep, and it's not nearly as complex as classical Arabic. Okay, so what happens a lot of times is students learn, and they call it fusha, those of you that are a little bit oriented. The first one, classical Arabic, we'll call it lisan al-Arab. Lisan al-Arab. You don't have to, if you don't know Arabic, you don't have to know that. For those of you that are a little bit more geekier, I'm giving you that, okay? So the classical one's called lisan al-Arab. But the one that's spoken nowadays, even the best of it, is actually al-Arabiya al-Fusha. It's clean Arabic. It's good, it's formal Arabic, it's proper Arabic, okay? But even al-Arabiya al-Fusha is actually a small fraction of what used to be lisan al-Arab. It's actually, even though the fundamental rules are the same, there's way more complexity, there's way more going on in classical Arabic than is going on in al-Arabiya al-Fusha. And that's important to know because a lot of times, enthusiastic students travel to different parts of the world to learn the language of the Quran, and they learn Fusha, and they assume that having learned Fusha, they've learned lisan al-Arab, they've learned classical Arabic, and they jumble those two together as though they are one. They are not one. They are different from each other, and there are profound differences between them, and that affects translation. That affects how we understand the Quran. So it's important to keep that distinction. Unfortunately, a lot of times students will go, and when they study and they come back, and you can even tell that they don't have that eye for classical Arabic in the way that they're translating the Quran, in the way that they're extracting information from it. And it's not a criticism of them. It's just a lot of our curricula are very lacking. And that clarity isn't there, and especially not there for those that are foreigners that are coming into learning the Arabic language. And by the way, this is a major tragedy for the Arab world because even a lot of Arab students that are familiar with the Arabic language aren't actually familiar much at all with Lughat al-Arab or Lisan al-Arab of back in the day. So that is a distinction that must be made. The third, of course, is the Arabic of the street. It's spoken Arabic. It's the Algerian dialect of Arabic, or the Egyptian dialect, or the Moroccan dialect, or the Tunisian dialect. And all of them are different accents in Arabic. It's kind of like the English of Scotland versus the English in Guyana, versus the English in Trinidad, versus the English in Texas, versus the English in California. They're worlds apart sometimes. And dialectical Arabic, or this kind of spoken Arabic, is so far from even formal Arabic at times that when people are speaking it, I'm a student of two. I'm a student of classical Arabic and of formal Arabic. And when people are speaking it, often I can't even tell if they're speaking Arabic. I mean, it's in there somewhere, but it's very hard to tell. Now, these sessions that I want to hold with you, this orientation that I want to give you, is actually about studying the language of the ancient Arabs. And while doing that, we're going to learn quite a bit of standard Arabic too, because the base is the same, but really our goal is to get to the language of the ancient Arabs. And that seems like a harder goal even for Arabs. Like Arabs that speak everyday Arabic have a hard time with classical Arabic. How are we supposed, us foreigners, how are we supposed to learn that stuff? The first bit of encouragement that I want to give you is that classical Arabic was codified, and classical Arabic was systematically studied and taught in our history by non-Arabs. Like it's the non-Arabs who saw, wait, the language of the Quran needs to be preserved just like the Quran is preserved. If we forget what the original language was like, we're going to start losing what the Quran originally meant to say. And so they actually started, the great movement of preserving Arabic grammar, preserving the expressions in the vocabulary system, the root analysis of it. So some of the greatest names in Arabic study in our history, Sibawayh, Zamakhshari, you name it, these are all non-Arabs. These are all foreigners to the Arabic language. And they have some of the greatest contributions, if not the greatest contributions, to the preservation of the Arabic language to date. So the good news is Allah made this part of the miracle of this ummah. وَآخَرِينَ مِنْهُمْ لَمَّا يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ. There are others other than the Arab that haven't yet joined them. And Allah knew that we're going to be joining and we're going to be contributing. So you will learn and you will excel. Inshallah, there's no doubt about it. And it's not something that's never happened before. That is our history. That's been happening. So none of you should ever think you cannot learn the Arabic language. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about myself in this orientation. When I got interested in Arabic study, I had forgotten how to read. And I went from there to be able to understand the Quran at a base level, not at an advanced level, but at a base level within 6 months. And within the next 6 months, I was starting to develop kind of a complex appreciation of the language of the Quran. And my studies are still continuing in the Arabic language and in the Quran. The thing about Arabic, though, is that it's so mathematical and it's so systematic that you can almost learn it not even like a language. You can learn it like you're sitting in a math class. You can just learn formulae. You can learn principles and exercises, and you can apply them, and you can start seeing them in action. It's a really cool systematic language. And the more I studied it from a linguistic point of view, the more I realized I could see now why Allah chose this language. It's so precise, and it's so logical, and it's so systematic. The thing is, when you take a step back and look at Arabic, and you see some scholar quoting like the root letter of this and the grammatical breakdown of that, you're like, oh, this is like an endless ocean. I will never get to it. But once you start taking one milestone at a time, one goal at a time, and systematically breaking it down, you will be shocked at how easy this language is, how systematic it is, and how easy it is to retain on top of that. Now, when I made the post about I'm going to do this session, and I want you guys to write me your comments about, what is it that's giving you a hard time in Arabic. I've taken a note of pretty much everything you've written down. Even though I didn't respond, I was too busy taking my notes instead of responding to you guys, because I'm going to be doing a series of these sessions. Pretty much every day, I'm going to do like a 10-minute or so session tackling one of the issues within Arabic studies. So the first of them that I wanted to tackle in this orientation is the 3 different kinds of Arabic. I want you to know that the language of the Quran is a specific category, and all of us can learn it. All of us can absolutely learn it. And I know people that are so knowledgeable in the language of the Quran, and they can't speak Arabic. Weird, but it's true. Those are 2 different skills. If you're going to work on speaking Arabic, that you can. وإذا أجدت الكلام وبلغت الإلسان في اللغة العربية, if you became fluent in the Arabic language, it's good for you. I wasn't fluent until maybe 6 or 7 years after I learned Quranic Arabic. At all. I didn't have anybody to speak to. So, you don't confuse those things. Oh, if I don't speak Arabic, how can I understand the language of the Quran? No, they're 2 different things. Think of speaking Arabic as a skill, and think of studying the Quran's Arabic as a science. You're studying science. Nobody speaks code, right? No, not anymore, right? No, people don't speak source code, but people can speak a language. So this language of the Quran, we can study it like a science and get pretty far. And then we can add the icing on the cake, study formal Arabic, so we can read other books and develop that. And actually, that becomes exponentially easier when you start with Quranic Arabic. And that's the next thing I want to tell you. In a standard method of teaching Arabic, what happens is they'll say, well, let me give you some vocabulary. My name is this. This is how you say that in Arabic. Ana ismi kada wa kada. Or I am from this place, or how are you, or whatever, these basic phrases, right? And then some student says, but I want to understand the Quran. There's no how are you in the Quran. I don't want to order a shawarma. I want to understand, Surah Al-Baqarah. And your teacher says, well, you're not at that level yet. It's going to take you several years before you can touch the Quran. What I like to do is, I like to start with the Quran. And we can get to everything else in Arabic later. And I have reasons to do that. One, Allah Himself promised He made the Quran easy. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. Right? So that's already Allah is saying, of all things made easy, Quran has especially been made easy for those who intend to remember Him. So if I was going to take a curricular approach as a teacher, and I want to start with what is easiest, I'm going to go with what Allah guaranteed as easiest. Okay, yeah, I know, 7 minutes extra time. I got you, Mihran. Thanks. Okay. So that's the first thing, that Allah in fact has made the study of the Quran easy for those who want to remember Him. If that's your intention, guaranteed Allah is going to make it easy. The second thing is motivation. And that's the last part of our today's orientation. The greatest obstacle you are going to face in the study of the Arabic language is going to be your motivation. You lose motivation quickly. You become demotivated because it's too hard to learn, or you're not retaining, or whatever you're learning, you're not seeing how it applies. So I've put something together that helps you see, even if you studied it for 20 minutes, you can apply those 20 minutes and see them in action. That's what motivated me. My teacher, the first time he taught me something about Arabic, we stood in prayer, and I didn't know what was going on except one word. And I was like, oh, I heard that word. Oh, that's awesome. I got to go to lesson 2. So if you see what you've learned applied to the Quran, and immediately something more about the Quran became understood to you, that's a victory. That's actually something that'll make you take the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step, right? So That's one of the most important things in successfully studying Arabic, is having a clear roadmap, and every step of that roadmap shows me how I've made progress with my ultimate goal, which is the Quran itself. I need to know, how did this better my understanding of the Quran? Not eventually one day you'll see. Eventually after 400 lessons, then you'll begin to see something in Allah's book. No. I want to begin to see something now. I want to know exactly, after an hour of having studied Arabic, how did my relationship with the Quran change? And that's what I do. That's the approach that I like to take for my students, is I want them to see immediately, how is this going to work? How is this going to affect you? How is this going to benefit you? And so over the course of the next few days, when I do these live sessions, I'll do them around the same time, inshallah, and they'll be short like this one. I'm going to start with advice for people who know absolutely zero Arabic. That should take no time at all. Because you shouldn't worry about conquering the Arabic language or learning all of the vocabulary. We'll get to that stuff. I'll answer all of your questions, I promise, inshallah. What we really want to get to is, how do you identify a specific milestone, forget everything else, just forget everything, leave everything else behind, just get to a particular milestone. This is what I'm going to get to in my Arabic studies, and until I get there, I'm not going to worry about anything else. And when I get there, then I'll worry about the next milestone. Don't become like the people who say, oh my God, I downloaded like 80 gigs of PDFs of Arabic books, and I've got this video series and this course and this, and you're doing like 50 things. You've got a lot of stuff on your hard drive, nothing in here. Because you're just overwhelmed with information. Learn Arabic in 3 hours, or learn Arabic in 30 days, or learn Arabic in this. And you've got these like quick fixes, and so many of them, that your mind is just scattered. When you do one thing, focus on it, get to your goal, and forget everything else. Even if you can do that, even if you're doing it part-time, you'll see amazing results. So I'm going to help you, figure that out. Figure that roadmap out for yourself, depending on your level. And that's what I'm going to try to do in these coming subsequent live sessions. Thanks a lot for listening. By the way, that's my bookshelf part of it. There's equal amount on the other side. And when I'm done with this series, I'll introduce you to some of these books. I mentioned that in Ramadan. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bye. Or okay, bye. That's my standard.